In this session, we're going to look at the function of poetry in Dryden's opinion. What does Dryden think? So, no, let us first decode this complete definition of poetry and of drama, and then we'll move on to poetry. So he says drama is a just and lively image of human nature, and this goes for drama and poetry both, because he treats drama also as an imaginative piece of literature and therefore very similar to poetry. Akin to poetry would be similar to poetry, right? So here what do we see Dryden saying? That well uh, Human nature. Now, what is human nature all about? It's about representing its passions and humors. Now, humors is also a state of mind, a particular emotional state. So he says, any work of art like drama or poetry aims or attempts to represent passions and humors as appropriately, as correctly, as sincerely as possible, and the elegance of fortune to which it is subject. So he says, now human nature varies, depends on the situation the human being finds themselves in, right? So, how does a human being react in a crisis? How does a human being react when a human being is faced with a problem or has to overcome some roadblock in their path? So, the fortune does not remain the same all the time, right? Fate changes. So, in drama, you can work with uh, uh, fortune, misfortune, sometimes show the protagonist as lucky, sometimes unlucky, make the protagonist suffer, sometimes make them experience joy and pleasure, sometimes make them experience suffering. So he says the work of drama intends to bring out the elegance of fortune, how elegantly the human can handle, how elegantly, how discreetly, how smartly, how humanely is the individual able to handle their change of fortune, right? And all this for the delight and instruction of mankind. So, the primary aim of drama is that it should delight and instruct. Delight, entertain. Instruct would be, well, instruct would be to teach, right? So here, Dryden clearly thinks that drama has two purposes. The first is to entertain or please your audience, and the second is to also have a didactic purpose, that is, a teaching purpose. There should be some message in what you are creating, right? So, this was about Dryden's opinion on what ideal drama should be like. And moving on to the function of poetry. Now, here again, I'm quoting from the Dryden. He says, delight is the chief, if not the only end of poesy. Instruction can be admitted, but in the second place for poesy only instructs as it delights. So, so in case of poetry, he's very clear that delight, that is pleasure, entertainment, is the only end, that is the only objective of poetry. Poetry's primary and in fact exclusive aim should be to offer entertainment, to provide pleasure. There can be room for teaching, but it can be admitted only after pleasure. So it can have a second place, but it cannot be the primary objective of poetry. For poetry only instructs as it delights. So there is a lot of instruction, there's a lot of teaching happening through the entertainment itself, because for poetry already you need to have finer sensibilities. You are transported into another world, into another mental state. So already there's a lot that is happening. Your emotions attain a level of sublimity, right? So therefore the instruction is embedded in the in the pleasure giving aspect of poetry. So the instructions of poetry are in fact psychological in nature. They are more at a mental level. And he says the same thing what he says for drama, that it's absolutely critical in poetry how the character reacts to a change of fortune which reflects his passions and his humors. So what mental state, what emotional state does the character go into or adopt when he undergoes a change of fortune? So if say everything is hunky dory, everything is very smooth in the person's life, and then suddenly the person is hit by a tragedy, how does the person react in that situation? Hmm? What kind of passions come into picture? What emotional state comes into the picture? That is what poetry should be able to accurately depict. Hmm? And by doing this, poetry becomes a mirror to human nature. So, in fact, if I have to extend the mirror analogy, I will say that it is like when we want to look good, when we want to look a shade better, what we do is we try to groom ourselves in front of the mirror. So, instead of a normal reflection of our everyday appearance, we try to look better if we are dressing up for a party, say, or a special occasion. So, we try to uh, do something to our face, we try to dress up properly. So that is what the purpose of poetry should be, that it should be a better version of reality. It should be a more idealized version of reality. It should be a concentration of emotions, of passions, of humors, and a nice arrangement of all these elements to depict human nature, right, as it can be seen around us. So, and the pleasure that poetry gives will arise because of the sense of the beautiful. So, because there will be so much beauty upon seeing there'll be so much beauty that is generated by the through the depiction of these passions, the depiction of crises, the depiction of problems, and how the interface of humans in a critical situation and the dynamics of passions and humors, that the overall impact is going to be very beautiful. And he says reality does not need to be presented or depicted as it is, it needs to be shaped, ordered, rearranged to seem beautiful. So it's like you have these wild flowers, you pick them up from the garden, and you just throw them on the floor in your house. It's not going to look beautiful. But if you arrange them in a vase, or if you make some kind of an arrangement in some kind of a pot or a container, a flower pot or a vase, there are different ways of arranging the same flowers, right? You snip some, you keep some long, you keep some short, you arrange them in different heights. So what happens is you are shaping, ordering, rearranging so that they have an aesthetic, a kind of an organized aesthetic to them, which is which has a human hand in it, right? So it's not a it's not a what do you say, it's not a natural aesthetic, it's aesthetic which has seen human intervention, human human hand at play, right? But he says over arrangement, over shaping, over ordering is also problematic. So excess of poetic imagination should be curbed. That is, poetic imagination also should be used in moderation. If you use it in excess, it can seem to be it could seem to be cosmetic, right? So that is what Dryden is trying to tell us from the function of poetry in his essay on dramatic poesy, by talking about drama and poetry. And he hopes that this could be the framework and these could be the guidelines for modern dramatists to be inspired when they are writing or they are producing new works of art, and also for critics to be able to judge or evaluate a literary work. So, hope you found this session interesting and beneficial, and I'll be back again with another session on another critic. Till then, take care.